A couple married for 60 years just revealed the one mistake that almost destroyed their marriage.
It wasn't about money, no, no, no.
And it definitely wasn't about cheating.
It was something way more dangerous. Something that crept up on us so slowly.
It happens in almost every long marriage. But nobody talks about it.
We're going to tell you about 3 mistakes. 3 big ones that almost ended everything.
Mistakes we made that you might be making right now.
The shocking truth about what really keeps marriages alive.
And the one thing every couple gets wrong around year 5. We sure did.
Let us show you exactly how this happened.
So it doesn't happen to you.
Meet Harold and Susan Martinez. They got married in 1964 when Harold was 22 and Susan was 20. Back then, gas cost 30 cents a gallon. They've lived through 11 presidents together. They raised 4 kids, buried their parents, and survived 2 house fires. Last month, they sat down with researchers studying long marriages. What they shared shocked everyone in the room because Harold and Susan almost got divorced, not once, but 3 times. The closest call? Year 37. They had separate lawyers, papers were drawn up, their kids didn't even know. But something changed their minds at the last second. And it wasn't love, it wasn't their kids, it wasn't even their faith. Now here's where things get really interesting. The first big mistake happens so slowly that couples don't even notice it. Harold calls it the fade. It starts around year 5 or 6. You stop saying I love you before bed. You forget to kiss goodbye in the morning. Small stuff, right? Wrong. By year 10, Harold and Susan were like roommates who shared bills. They talked about groceries and car repairs, nothing else. Susan said she felt lonelier in her marriage than she did when she was single. Here's the scary part. They both thought this was normal. Everyone told them marriage gets boring. Everyone said the passion dies, so they accepted it. For 15 years, they lived like strangers under the same roof. Harold would come home from work and go straight to the garage. Susan would make dinner and eat alone while watching TV. They slept in the same bed, but might as well have been on different planets. The researchers found this same pattern in 78% of struggling marriages. It's not the big fights that kill love. It's the quiet disappearance of small connections. One couple they studied hadn't held hands in 23 years. Another couple realized they didn't know each other's favorite songs anymore. But if you think that's crazy, wait until you hear this. The second mistake is even more dangerous because it feels like you're doing something good. Susan calls it the sacrifice trap. Around year 20, Susan gave up her photography hobby. She told herself it was for the family. They needed the money for the kids' college. Her camera collected dust in the closet. Harold did the same thing. He loved woodworking, but sold all his tools to pay for a bigger house. Here's what nobody told them. When you sacrifice your identity for marriage, you become someone your partner doesn't recognize anymore. By year 30, Harold didn't know who Susan was. The fun, creative woman he married was gone. She'd become just the mom and the wife. Susan looked at Harold and saw a tired stranger who never smiled. The researchers explained something shocking. Healthy, long marriages need both people to stay interesting. You can't pour everything into the relationship and forget yourself. It sounds selfish, but it's not. When Susan finally picked up her camera again at age 55, something magical happened. Harold saw that spark in her eyes return. She had stories to tell again. She was excited about life. One expert said it perfectly. You can't love someone you don't know, and you can't know someone who doesn't exist outside the marriage. This same pattern destroys thousands of marriages every year. People wake up at 50 or 60 and realize they sacrificed so much that there's nothing left. They look at their partner and think, "Who are you?" Even worse, they look in the mirror and think the same thing. Harold admitted something painful. At year 35, he had an emotional affair with a woman at work. Not physical, but he shared feelings with her he hadn't shared with Susan in years. Why? Because this woman knew him. She asked about his dreams. She remembered he used to love building things. This brings us to the most shocking discovery of all. The third mistake nearly ended everything, and it's the one mistake every marriage counselor sees but rarely talks about publicly. Harold and Susan call it the scoreboard. Somewhere around year 25, they started keeping score. I did the dishes 3 times this week. You only did it once. I drove the kids to practice every day last month. I'm always the one who has to apologize first. Every little thing became a point. Every favor became ammunition for future arguments. By year 37, they had 12 years of scoreboards built up in their minds. The researchers said this is the #1 silent killer of long marriages. Why? Because it turns love into a competition, and someone always feels like they're losing. The breaking point came on a random Tuesday. Harold asked Susan to pick up his prescription. She exploded. "I always do everything. When do you help me?" Harold shot back with a list of 20 things he'd done that month. They screamed at each other for 2 hours. Both felt completely justified. Both felt like the victim. That night, Harold slept in a hotel. He called a divorce lawyer the next morning. But here's the twist that saved everything. Their youngest daughter, Maria, showed up at their house. She didn't know about the fight. She was just dropping off some photos she'd found in her old room. Photos of Harold and Susan from 1970. Young, laughing, dancing at a friend's wedding. Susan started crying. Not sad tears. She was crying because she couldn't remember the last time they danced. Maria left, confused. Harold came home that evening to get more clothes. He saw Susan holding those old photos. She looked up at him and said 5 words that changed everything. "I don't want to win." That's it. No big speech, no dramatic moment, just those 5 words. Because that's what the scoreboard had turned into, a battle where both people lose even when they win. Harold sat down. They talked until 3 a.m., really talked. No scores, no points, no keeping track. They made a pact that night. If you do something for your spouse, you do it from love, not to earn points, not to hold over their head later, just because you love them. The researchers found something interesting. Marriages who keep score have a 92% higher chance of divorce after 30 years. Think about that. So what does all this mean for us today? These 3 mistakes aren't just about old couples. They're happening in marriages right now, maybe even yours. The fade happens when life gets busy. Kids, jobs, bills. You stop dating each other. You stop being curious about each other's day. Young couples think they're immune. We'll never get boring, they say. But Harold and Susan thought that too. The sacrifice trap is even sneakier today. Social media makes it worse. Everyone posts about being the perfect parent or perfect spouse, so we sacrifice more, trying to match that fake perfection. We give up hobbies, friends, dreams, and we think we're being noble. The scoreboard mistake might be the worst for modern marriages because now we have actual scores. I texted you back in 2 minutes, but you took an hour. I posted about our anniversary, but you didn't. Everything becomes evidence. Everything becomes proof of who cares more. Experts say these patterns start small. You miss one goodnight kiss, no big deal. You give up one hobby. You keep track of one chore. But 5 years later, 10 years later, 30 years later, these small things have built a wall between you. The good news is, it's fixable. Harold and Susan proved it. At 82 and 80 years old, they go on weekly dates, real dates. They dress up, they hold hands, they ask each other questions like they're still getting to know each other. Susan has her own photography studio now. Harold built a workshop in their garage. They support each other's individual lives, and they threw away the scoreboard. If one person does more dishes that week, so what? If one person is having a hard time and needs more support, that's what marriage is for. Before we wrap up, there's one final thing you need to know. Here's the final secret Harold and Susan shared, the thing that really saved their marriage at year 37. It wasn't the photos, it wasn't the conversation, it was a choice they made the next morning. They decided to date each other again, not just go on dates, but actually court each other like they did in 1963. Harold brought Susan flowers every Friday, not expensive ones, gas station flowers, but every Friday. Susan started leaving notes in Harold's lunch, silly notes. "You're cute," or "Thanks for being weird with me." They started saying "I love you" again before bed, every single night, even after bad fights, especially after bad fights. The researchers found something beautiful in this. Marriages don't die from one big moment. They die from 1,000 tiny neglects, but they also heal from 1,000 tiny efforts. You don't need a grand gesture. You need Friday flowers. You need lunch notes. You need consistent, small love. Harold and Susan are 82 and 80 years old now. They still mess up. They still argue. Last month, they had a big fight about the thermostat, but they don't keep score anymore. They don't let the fade happen, and they both have their own lives that make them interesting to each other. 60 years of marriage isn't about finding the perfect person. It's about choosing the same imperfect person every single day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. So if you're married, look at your spouse tonight. Really look at them. When's the last time you held their hand just because? When's the last time you pursued your own dream? And are you keeping score? Those old photos saved Harold and Susan because they reminded them of something important. They used to choose each other every day. Then they stopped choosing. They just existed together. Don't let that happen to you, because the couple married 60 years has one final warning. The biggest mistake isn't falling out of love, it's forgetting to fall back in.